Hello, everyone. Dr. Maria Sampoulos and Dr. Ted McElroy today on the Reframing Eye Care podcast, where we talk about SECO's MedPRO360 business program and what it has to feature this year. And it's an exciting program. I can't wait to go to Atlanta and get some business education. So thank you, Ted, for coming on the podcast.
Maria, it's my pleasure. I'm really excited about the time we're going to spend today talking about this program, and what we're very excited also about having the program in Atlanta again this year. The joke had always been in the past, SECO always in Atlanta, always in February. A couple of years ago, we said most of the time in Atlanta because we did New Orleans a couple of times, and usually in February. But as we know this year, part of it's in March. So really looking forward to having the program starting up.
No, SECO is one of my favorite CE events of the year. Great CE, and Atlanta is easy to get in and out of for me being on the East Coast. So it's just great, and just get it done at all my CE at the beginning of the year and not have to worry about it. So
what are some of the programs that have really stood out to you in the past?
So the MedPRO360 has been great for me, but really in the past two, besides the business, I did some IPL lectures, so I learned about that. And then there was also a lot of glaucoma, which I have to keep up with my license here in Rhode Island. So those have been great. The clinical courses have been very, very good, and the speakers are very diverse. So it doesn't seem like it's the same content every year, and that's been very refreshing for me.
Yeah, and actually, I'm sure the listeners already know this about you, but you've been on our stage a couple of times as well. And as you had just said, we do try to keep it diverse and fresh, and we rotate through the speakers pretty regularly. So, that's always nice to have new faces and on a regular basis. So we appreciate you being with us.
Yeah, it's always an honor to speak, and among other doctors too that are well known in the industry, it's always an honor. So to come out and give my lecture, and hopefully it's well received. Did a corporate optometry lecture, which was one of the first time in the industry, and SECO was very innovative and allowing that. So that's been great for me, honestly. And I think for, corporate ODs or doctors that want to go in that sector. So
thank you.
Always very proud of that. The last year, the podcast we did was well received. And last year you talked about the history of MedPRO360. Can you just give us a little bit of overview for maybe those that haven't listened to our podcast?
Yes. It has gone through some evolutionarily changes. Back in 2016, I believe, was the very first year we had done it. We were looking at it mostly being a large format type program where it was going to be a large stage with almost very similar to the concept that we're doing right now with either the symposiums or the special sessions that SECO has been known for. And looking at it more from a standpoint, though, of it being more business related and trying to reach some speakers that were really outside of our profession. The very first year we had it, we had a gentleman named Dennis Snow who had written a book, and it was all about Disney and the way they did things. That same year we had, I'm trying to remember the gentleman's name, the leader of Singularity University I apologize, I cannot for the life of me remember his name right off the top of my head, but he talked about just different technology and how it was affecting healthcare. And this gentleman was a practicing cardiologist. I think now he's really just mostly staying with Singularity University. And it was one of the most incredible talks I've ever seen in my life. He brought his slide deck in, his PowerPoint presentation, and it had 250 slides, and he was only going to be on stage for an hour. And we thought, there is no possible way. And it was one of the most seamless, amazing talks I've ever seen. He's done a number of TED Talks, and I mean, he was just talking and clicking, and all you saw were these pictures behind his head just changing constantly. And he never missed a beat. He knew exactly where he was the whole time. He would just be clicking and talking, and all of a sudden he'd say, "Oh, and he had probably one of the very first Aura rings, which now you see those everywhere." He said, "And here's this new device we're looking at right now called the Aura Ring, and it's taking care of all my data for my sleep." And I mean, and I was just mesmerized not only at just imagine the amount of content that he had and how well he presented it, but just the fact that he was so slick and just knew exactly where he was from the moment he just kept clicking. And so those were the concepts we had. The large format type thing got a little bit challenging because with the special sessions and the symposia, it got a little crowded trying to get stage time. So the year we moved to New Orleans for the first time, we did a more traditional type of program where it was smaller rooms, probably trying to keep around 125 to 150 people, and had more. Our programming was basically being put on by optometrists that were a little bit more business focused. The first year that we did that, we had Mick Kling, and he did a discussion on how to merchandise your practice. He also did some other things on thing that he's most known for, which is profit first, and making sure that you're protecting your money, which is very important because the worst thing you can do is run out of money. The amazing thing is you can be profitable and broke at the same time, and it's really not that incredible to hear people do something like that. Matter of fact, many years ago, when I built this building that we're in right now, back in 2002, my wife came to me and said, just want to let you know, we're going to pay everybody else, but you haven't been paid for the last month, and I don't know when we're going to be able to pay you. We were profitable, but we were out of cash. And if you got no cash, it makes it really tough. So I never want anybody to go through something like that. It was a learning experience that no one should ever have to learn about. And so if you can hear other people make some of those same kind of mistakes, you get to live vicariously through their mistakes and hopefully you won't make them yourself. So that's a lot about what we try to do with some of the programming that we're putting together.
Yeah. I mean, I looked through the educational sessions. I mean, there's a lot of great topics. Give us a little bit background on, the educational goals for SECO 2024 and what you anticipate for it impacting our profession.
One of the things that we're really going to spend some time on is talking about team building and leadership and where leadership roles fit in place. We've got Francis Bynum and Tanya Ronaldson, a duo team that are going to come in. And that's one of the things they're really going to spend a lot of time on is talking about building those relationships, building the team, and also how that fits into the framework of what you do on a day-to-day basis. Then we've got another program of collaboration that they're going to work on. One of the things that becomes a challenge is when you're making referrals out to other practitioners. And one of the things I think is really important is that optometry does everything they can to refer to optometry. Just because I'm not a specialist in one particular thing doesn't mean that there's not one of our colleagues that does it amazingly well, and they should be taking care of those people first. Not saying that ophthalmology is the devil or anything. I'm just saying we should try to keep this in the family as much as we possibly can. And that's one of the challenges that optometry has had for so many years, is that we don't tend to refer within ourselves. I don't know if it's because we think we're going to lose that patient forever because they're going to go to another optometrist. But I would dare say that, if you're looking at a situation from maybe you're not that strong in scleral contact lenses. Well, if you are referring this person to someone in the practice of optometry that is great at scleral contact lenses, that's going to keep them very busy. They're going to want to make sure that you get that guest back. They don't want to keep those people. They would like to continue to keep getting more referrals from you. So that's one part of it. The other side of this thing is a lot of times we're referring for the wrong reason. Maybe we're referring to someone for some sort of issue with macular degeneration, but we're not categorizing it in the right way. We're not getting the information to the retinal specialist that they need to have it in the way they need to have it. Maybe the cataract surgeon wants certain things out of you informationally before you send that guest over. That's some of the other things we're going to talk about to try to get that information across so everyone understands this is what some of these referral patterns look like. Then we've also got a neuro optometry and concussion talk that Katie Davis is going to do, and I'm really excited about that because concussion syndrome has become a really big issue. We've swept it under the rug in healthcare for so long, and now it's finally getting its due of attention that it needs. And there's a lot of stuff I really don't know. It's a kind of a black box for me personally. So I was really excited when we got this program together. And then one program I'm going to talk about, I'm actually going to get to share the stage with Mick Kling, one of my dearest friends. He and I were actually classmates in optometry school together at SEO. And I guess I should ask this before I say it. Do you have a bleep button handy
I do. I don't think I've never been asked that before, so I don't know.
Does your will your podcast get an E if I say a dirty word on this?
Maybe, yeah. So we want to keep it.
Okay. So then the name of this talk is Leader Beep.
Okay.
Leader Beep.
Yeah.
Spelt SH exclamation plus sign. That's literally how it's spelled. And basically it's the fact that leadership is messy. And it's this was actually inspired by a podcast I was listening to that Pat Lencioni was doing on his At the Table. In fact, if you want to go back and listen to it, it was May of last year. It was called 4-Letter Words. Absolutely fantastic talk. It was all about how 4-letter words, it really just fascinated Pat, and how 4-letter words, if used correctly, quote unquote, have a lot more power to them. But also my point of it was, okay, but sometimes what we're doing is it's a messy type of thing. And that's actually when somebody in the episode said, I've been thinking for years of writing a book called this, about how messy leadership is. And I thought that would be a great talk. So what we're going to do is we're going to have topics, and we're going to invite the audience to tell some of their tales of when things didn't quite go well. I mean, I gave you one earlier about, leaving a practice that I thought was doing really well. My wife was doing the books, and then I found out we got no money because we've outgrew our money. We knew it was coming in sooner or later, but that's kind of messy. And how do you have that conversation? What kind of things do you do? What do you do differently? There's lots of other things that fall into those kind of categories. And I'm really excited about that discussion. Also, Mick is going to be on the stage with a gentleman named Ali Amshran, who is a lawyer by trade. They have a company called HR for Health, and they're going to discuss a lot of HR issues that affect all of us and how we go through life a little bit scared when it comes to HR issues. They're going to basically talk about how to hire and how to let go, maybe some of your people on your team when it's necessary. Another thing that we're going to bring in is Mr. Bill Gerber. I know a lot of you probably recognize Bill. He's very, very well known in social media and optometry and eye care. And he's going to be talking about the psychology of product assortment and why it's important to put things in a certain way. We've got him on a couple of other programs as well. We've also got Jay Binkwitz. Jay has had a lot of good following over the years. He's going to talk about maximizing your profits with your vision care plans, which is extremely important to all of us.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how to thrive actually without taking vision care plans. So he's going to actually do one side, and literally the next hour, we're going to completely turn the box upside down and talk about it from a completely different side. So that's going to be a really exciting program as well.
Yeah. So my audience usually is the corporate optometrist. And I think that era has exploded, has expanded. I think there's more than ever. And I think it's going to continue to grow as companies expand, and maybe if you put PE into that, sector, or maybe it's sector is separate, depending on who you talk to. What are some program benefits for these doctors?
Well, I mean, going back into building your team, I would presume that that's going to be really important to everyone, because you do have your ancillary staff that's helping you in a lot of situations. You are looked upon as the leader of that organization. You need to make sure that you're taking care of things. Also, going back to how you're doing your referrals. And I know there has been a significant change in the way that corporate optometry has changed over the years. And it's really exciting to see the fact that it is not your, grandparents or your parents' corporate optometry, just like every other bit of optometry is not the same as it used to be. Yeah. Having the ability to bail out for different things, looking at the way you run your business, because it is a business. you have to make sure that you are taking care of the business side of what you do. While you may not have as much of the interaction with materials and things like that, you still have to make sure that you're running your business in a way that's going to make it profitable for you, where you're taking care of you, your family, and everybody else who supports you.
Yeah, I thought it was very important with that aspect for the business, for team building, hiring, firing, financial success. I mean, that's always important for doctors. Vision plans are sometimes a big strain on some of these practices as well. They see a lot of patients, but also with vision plans, but also how to convert them into medical. So a lot of doctors in the corporate setting want to convert to medical. So I think the education portion for diabetes, glaucoma, the equipment portion of how to add this technology into their office with the discounts at the marketplace, I think is important too. And I think a lot of doctors do come to SECO for that. And I know there's Corporate Event, CODA, and AACO events there as well, which are not in other conferences. So I think there's a lot of benefit for that sector of the industry.
One thing I do want to hit on, and this is something that our general chair for education, Dr. Paula Jamian, said to me many years ago. In fact, it was 1996. Only reason I can remember this vividly is because of something my wife and I were going through at the time. My children are in vitro babies, and we had both had fertility issues, both I and my wife. And the clinic that we were going to just happened to be in the same building as Paul's practice with Omni. I had done years of time knowing Paul, but where I met Paul originally was an extern in 1992. And it was I told Paul it was a little scary walking back into that room with him, for all those years later, but it was a completely different situation. And I was kind of excited about the fact that I had written my very first article for a magazine, wrote it for Optometric Management. And I said, well, I got to tell you, Paul, it's nothing as cool as what you do, writing about glaucoma and, all the things you got to do. And he said, that may be true, Ted, but you need to understand something. It doesn't do us any good to know how to do all that stuff until somebody knows how to pay us for it.
Yeah.
So the article that you wrote about you running your business is just as important as learning how to treat all this stuff. And that's the thing I really applaud SECO for, is the fact that we've taken a program and dedicated it to running your business. And that business can be corporate optometry, it can be private practice, it could be some other type of situation where maybe you're a practice that has no walls. Maybe you're in low vision and you are spending your time literally going from practice to practice to practice, but you still got to make sure that you're getting paid, because it does you no good if you're not getting paid. So a lot of the axioms that you're going to learn while you're at this program are going to be really important to running your day-to-day business. And that's one thing I really appreciate about what SECO is doing with this program.
Yeah, I know you touched upon this, but are you seeing what are the new trends in practice management now in the industry?
What do you mean by new trends?
What are you seeing doctors more focused on practice management? Are they focused more on billing? Are they on using AI? Are they more on leadership skills? Trying to find the best associate, retain the associates. There's a lot of problem areas that a lot of doctors focus on right now, and just need solutions, and it's just been a little more difficult than ever.
I guess, and the reason I kind of wanted you to specify this a little bit more, because I didn't want to make sure I didn't spit out an answer that I already had in my head a little bit as you started with this, but it is going to be the answer I was going to give. I don't think there's really ever anything that's really new. I think there's a lot of stuff that's repackaged. I think there's a lot of things that are rethought. Maybe if there's anything that's really new, and it's probably not really new anymore, it is the fact that as leaders of your organization, it's really important to be vulnerable. And I think there's a lot of that comes out in many of the programs that we have in front of us. One of them, Susan Keene's got, is how to retain and create a motivated team. If you're leading your team with, I got it all and I don't need any help and you'll never see me sweat, you're not going to keep them for very long. I think people need to know that you're an approachable individual as a leader, and they need to know that as the leader, you're there in service of them as opposed to the other way around. Um, Again, I guess I lean a lot into Pat Lencioni's philosophy on, he's got a great book called The Motive. And he says there's really two types of leaders. There are leaders that are in it for themselves. And it's about what kind of accolades it's going to give me. How is it going to help me in my life? What kind of things are it going to be to do? And then there are leaders who do it because they are in service of others. And that's probably really a true leader. It's someone who is in service of others, because if you're in it for just yourself, it's such a finite amount that you'll get out of it. Whereas if you're in service for someone else and you're leading them to things that they didn't realize they could do, that pays off for generations. And not just for you, it'll pay off for those others that you led them in those directions. So I think there's a lot of what you'll see in the programming, and I'm looking off to the side here on what our actual program is. We've got one called Hug Your Patients. It is about truly caring for those individuals that are sitting in that chair. And it might not necessarily be because they have an eye problem. It might be because of something else that's going on. I can't tell you how many times, and I'm sure it's happened to you too, Maria, where you're sitting in the exam room with this guest and they start telling you these stories about things that are going on in their life. And you spend a lot more time with them and get a lot more out of it because you gave a part of yourself to that individual. Go ahead. Sorry.
I think patients want an experience. They want to get to know their doctor. I mean, I've been seeing patients for 17 years now, and some of these patients I've had in practice for more than 10 years. And they've, asked how my kids are doing every year. It depends when you see the patient, right? Some patients you see in the summertime. You're going on the same vacations. You're doing or Christmas time, like things like that. And patients want to know, And last week it's what we're there for. 2 retinal detachments. We caught it early, referred them out, and the staff was good, and we saved their eye. You feel good. That's what you're there for. And then I had another patient. We just got an IPL in the practice. Said that you changed my life just with the IPL, right? And
right.
That's what we're there for, to help these patients. And then, it offsets sometimes where we're having a bad day. But that's what we're there for. And I think it's good for the staff, too, that wants to be fulfilled in what they do as well, and be part of something bigger that makes a difference in the community.
Exactly. And I think the sharing with your team in this success is really important. Dr. Mark Kapperman in Chattanooga, Tennessee, has probably done this better than anybody I've ever seen. I'm sure lots of people do this, but you've gotten those letters. I'm looking at a couple of them right here on my bulletin board over here from a guest who sent me a card, who we put in scleral lenses for the first time. This gentleman had been best corrected was 20/80. He was referred to me actually by an ophthalmologist that we had referred for cataract surgery many times for, and he sent me this letter. And in the letter, the very first sentence, it said, "I'm introducing Oliver to you because I told him you can fix his problem and nobody else has been able to fix it." And I thought, gee, no pressure there, right? And, happened to have been to a scleral contact lens lecture at SECO and had decided to get my feet wet. And I'd done a few people and had success. And I think I had told the surgeon that I'd had success. And next thing you know, here's this person with pellucid corneal degeneration sitting in my chair. Best corrections 20/80 for the last however many years. He literally hadn't driven a car in 5 or 6 years. He'd had cataract surgery. Nothing was really making any better for him. We put a pair of scleral lenses on him, got him behind the phoropter, and he was seeing 20/20 in one eye and 20/25 in the other. And how that made me feel was incredible. What was most impressive was turning around and saying something to his wife, because I didn't realize what was going on. I just was going to say, "Hey, Sally," that's literally her name. And she can't talk because she's crying. Yeah. And she says, "You don't understand. He's never seen like this." Well, this is something that we get to see because we're there. We're watching it. Well, Mark Kapperman what he does is when he gets that letter, he brings it to the office meeting and he reads it in front of his entire office team and says things like, Brenda, because you were the one that made that appointment, you shared in that experience that Oliver had. And Kathleen, because you ran the tests that made sure I got all the information before I went in that exam room and I knew what I was walking into before I got in there, you made it possible for us to get Oliver seeing well. Yes. And Allison, because you ordered those contact lenses and made sure that they got here on time because he had not seen for all these years and you just wanted to make sure he could see that much better. You're part of that success also. And that's the thing that you learn from our colleagues by hearing this information over and over again in a framework that's done in a classroom situation. But I got to tell you, Maria, I learned so much more just standing on the exhibit hall floor talking to a buddy of mine or talking to you, over a meal while we're there. Those are the kind of things where I think a lot of the learning takes place. And it's not necessarily because it took place in a classroom. I mean, don't get me wrong. The classroom's important. We have to have that. But that sparked a conversation, which really led into something that I had a truly great learning experience from. And I think that happens over and over again at SECO.
No, you're right. You're right. And I just want to piggyback from what you said with that. We had, like I said, we had a retinal detachment this week and we had a new front desk staff. There's been a high turnover, unfortunately. And basically at the end of the day, I said, thank you so much. I said, for getting him. You called a bunch of retina specialists who couldn't get him. I said, you saved his eye today. Yeah. And she's like, what? I said, well, you saved it. You made those phone calls to get him in. And she didn't think about it like that, but because she's new to the office and things like that. But she felt empowered, like she did something like to make that. And that is important. But also when going to these conferences, I go to a lot of conferences. Me talking to different doctors, I get a lot of information and then doctors that are in the trenches that see our practice, like-minded individuals to get together and get that information of what you need. And it's been great to go to these to learn a lot more, but also for myself to be like, wow, Ted's doing that in his practice. I'm not doing that. I should need to go back and get a little better. And I think every time I go back to the office after a conference, I think my office manager cringes a little bit because I have a new idea or I have a new thing I want to try. And so they've been great for me professionally as a doctor because I've really grown over the years, and it really helps your patients as well. But when you were talking before, about what's going on with the patient and getting to know them, I think one of the things that popped out in my head was, emotional intelligence lecture, communication and building relationships. That's important. Like emotional intelligence is something that I think, you have to kind of learn as a doctor, and you just get better at it as you're more seasoned professional. But you can kind of tell, like, that patient that you've been seeing for years that might be irritated a little bit, and then just taking the time to talk to them about something because something's bothering them. I think it's just that relationship building. You build that trust, and that, I think that's important. And I think it's, this kind of information, this kind of content that SECO provides that's not out there in the industry.
Right. Yeah. And it really starts a springboard into what really is possible in your practice. Going back to one thing you said a minute ago, when you said, wow, Ted's doing this, that ought to be a cue to everybody that anybody can do it if I'm doing it, because I'm not that smart, for one thing. But that's another thing that I think hearing a lot of our colleagues are doing this or that kind of gives you permission to do it. You know what I mean? And I think that's what's so important about these meetings that we get to go to, is to have that opportunity to have a conversation, to get permission from our colleagues that if I can do this, you can do it. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, that's what I tell a lot of, hey, if I can do it, so can you. And so I want to know, any new buzz ideas about SECO this year? Anything different than other times over the years?
As far as the rest of the general program, I'd have to unfortunately tell you I'm not as knowledgeable about what's happening in some of the rest. I've had my head buried in our program so much that it's been difficult to find out exactly what's happening there. I do know that they're changing the way some of the entertainment is being done this year. There's going to be a larger program. Well, they're sort of expanding the Bad Habits program this year on Friday night, as opposed to having them like be in the opening band for the big band on Saturday. So there's going to be a little bit more of the party feel that's going to happen.
That's good.
And I'm not certain about some of the other social events, but that's kind of what SECO is known for, is a lot of the social type kind of things as well. The education side of things, my best recommendation to tell you is to have everyone go to SECO 2024, and you can find out a lot of the information on the content of what's taking place in the rest of the program. This year, because of when you're running a component of the program, you don't get a chance to go to a lot of the continuing education because you're busy running your continuing education. So I'm not as well knowledgeable about what's happening as I used to be when I was running through the chairs for SECO, because you knew exactly what was happening in those years. One
of the things that I found is I get there early, and I like to try to get all my education in the first couple of days as much as I could. It's like a marathon if I can. What I found is more education and less downtime to kind of squeeze in the hours for doctors that really want that. And they can get all their education done at SECO, and there's not a lot of breaks and things like that. So I think some doctors really appreciate that. And I've also heard that, the marketplace is robust, and there's going to be a lot of vendors and a lot of new technology, right? I think there's a lot of exciting innovations coming out. And I think we can get a lot of information just talking to vendors one-on-one. And I mean, just even pharma stuff coming out. I think there's a lot of launches at SECO as well. So for me, it's kind of exciting to be on the latest and greatest and kind of know the in. And that's been one of the things for me, going to some conferences to talk with, companies and vendors and things like that. So that's been very impactful for me. What other programs outside of the annual Congress does MedPRO360 offer? Can doctors that aren't going, can they get information online? Or
certainly. I mean, one of the things you could always do is sign up for SECO University, which is all the content that's been recorded at SECO is there for you. And if Walt Mayo created this thing he calls the Frankenquarter, I believe that's what he called it. And basically what it does is it times out the way our PowerPoint presentations are going, and it basically runs simultaneously with the audio side. So what you're actually getting to see are the slides running in real time while the presentation is being taken place. Now, our special sessions are going to be better recorded because they've got cameras and those kind of things. So you'll actually get to see not only the slide deck, but you'll get to see the presenter. But that doesn't happen in the regular classroom. However, all the content from last year's SECO is there for you. All the content from the year before that is there for you. All the content from the year before that, and so on and so on. So by going on to SECO University, you actually get years of content that you could go back and listen to and learn from people who haven't been on stage maybe in the last 2 or 3 years from SECO. That way, if this happens to be one of those years that they're not there, you got an opportunity to still hear from them. It's a really great evergreen type kind of program, and I think everybody should take opportunity to get that. However, if you are attending SECO and you're coming in on the program, which is the general, I can't remember the name of the package, but it's the all-encompassing package, that's included. So if there's a class that's going on while you are in another class, you don't have to miss it. You can go back and listen to it later. So that's a really neat program to get in your hands.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast and talking about MedPRO360. Thank you also for all the hard work that you do as a chair to get the latest and greatest education and, innovative approach to optometry in 2024. I mean, I think a lot of us need business education. A lot of us don't know that. We want to aspire and do better in our practices. And I applaud you and your team for really, getting a lot of that, those topics out there on leadership, financial intelligence, sales, customer service, marketing, billing, coding. I mean, there's a lot of these topics that keep coming up in our industry and questions from doctors. So, thank you so much for having that. And then the doctors that can't go, they can sign up on SECO University to get this information as well.
And thank you for having me, Maria. And I would be remiss if I didn't take a moment to also thank the team that's behind doing this. It's not just me that is putting this program together. Dr. Will Smith, Dr. Neil Drayson, Dr. Jim Herman, and also Lynn Lawrence is in there with us. I'm certain I'm going to forget somebody. We've got a number of people on the program, but most importantly, the person that really supports us the most is Renee Shepard. If it weren't for her, we would have such a hard time putting this program together. She supports the whole education committee and makes everything look like we actually know what we're doing.
No,
so if it wasn't for her, we would all be in a world of hurt. I'll tell you that.
She does great content every year. It's different. It's latest and greatest. And I think doctors really appreciate that to stay up to date. I've always heard great things about the clinical and the business education from SECO. So everyone's doing a great job.
Thank you.
All right.